Trump launches attacks on Iran more powerful than those on February 28 with full force. And the order was given while the American president was in Turkey at the NATO summit after 3 commercial vessels were hit in the Strait of Hormuz. The United States Central Command began a series of bombings against military structures linked to the Iranian regime in southern Iran, hitting areas around Bandar Abbas, Sirik, and Kish Island. According to information released by American authorities and the international press, the response came after civilian ships carrying oil and natural gas left the Persian Gulf for the Gulf of Oman and became targets of attacks attributed to Iran. The political message is strong. Trump did not accept that Tehran would test the ceasefire, threaten innocent crews, and treat an international route as the property of the Revolutionary Guard. What started as provocation at sea turned into airstrikes on defense systems, radars, missiles, drones, and ports used to pressure shipping. The biggest challenge, the biggest adversary we face at this point. Pat Hegseth is also expected to travel to Israel, where he will have talks with Benjamin Netanyahu and Israel Katz, making it clear that Washington and Jerusalem are coordinating the next phase of the pressure campaign. What made Trump give a much stronger response than before? And why did Iran decide to attack civilian ships in Hormuz? How can this offensive put even more pressure on the Ayatollah's regime? I'm going to tell you all about that in a moment. If you like this kind of straightforward, no-nonsense content, consider subscribing because we have videos like this every day. Boy. The American operation began on the night of July 7, 2026 in response to attacks on 3 commercial ships passing through the Strait of Hormuz. The region is home to one of the most sensitive oil and gas routes on the planet, and the Iranian regime decided to act right there, using the threat at sea as an instrument of blackmail. The United States Central Command stated that the action was taken to exact a heavy price for the attack on civilian crewed vessels in an international waterway. It was a military and political response. Iran attacked at sea, and Trump responded in the territory used by the regime to sustain that pressure. The list of targets shows that Washington did not treat the case as a minor incident. American officials, quoted by the press, said that the attacks targeted air defense systems, coastal surveillance, surface-to-air missiles, anti-ship cruise missile positions, drone launch platforms, and port facilities. This means that the response was not merely symbolic. The target was the structure that helps Iran monitor, threaten, and attack shipping in the Strait of Hormuz, according to a US official quoted by Axios. The new round was 4 or 5 times greater in range and strength than the previous response in Hormuz, carried out 10 days earlier. Bandar Abbas emerged as one of the most sensitive locations that night because it is at the center of Iranian naval power in southern Iran. There are structures linked to the regime's maritime control there, as well as areas used for military movement and pressure on the Persian Gulf. There were also reports of explosions near the regime's maritime facilities, as well as areas used for military movement and pressure on the Persian Gulf. Charid Haqqani in Sirik and on Keshem Island. Iranian media acknowledged explosions at locations in southern Iran. And that was already enough to show that the attack hit the corridor that Tehran uses to try to control the strait. In the reports circulating, Bandar Abbas Airport also gained attention for supposedly sheltering an important figure of the regime. But the most reliable public evidence so far mainly confirms the attacks against military and port structures in the region. The American reaction is due to attacks on commercial vessels. One of them was identified as the liquefied natural gas ship Al Rakayat, linked to Qatar, which was hit near the coast of Oman. Another ship mentioned in the investigations was the Saudi oil tanker Udian. The authorities of Qatar and Saudi Arabia blamed Iran and treated the attacks as a direct threat to international navigation and energy supply. This point is important because the Iranian regime tried to sell the idea that it controls the passage and can impose conditions on the ships. But Hormuz is not the property of the Revolutionary Guard. it is an international route. It is used by civilians, companies, and nations that cannot be held hostage by an armed regime. Trump authorized the response while he was in Turkey during the NATO summit. The meeting involved key figures from the American government, including Pete Hegseth, Marco Rubio, Scott Bessent, and General Dan Caney. The picture is clear. The president did not treat the aggression as diplomatic noise. He brought together defense, diplomacy, treasury, and military command at the same table. That's when the pressure became total. At the same time that American planes were striking southern Iran, the Treasury Department revoked the authorization that allowed the temporary sale of Iranian oil. The concession had been open for 60 days and now it was cut off, with an end date set for July 17th. The financial side of the punishment carries a lot of weight. Oil is one of the main sources of money for the Iranian regime, and the suspension of the authorization directly affects the cash flow that sustains the power apparatus of the Ayatollahs. After the announcement, the price of oil rose by more than 5%, showing that the world understood the size of the risk. Netanyahu had already told CNN that despite occasional disagreements, he and Trump are aligned on the major issues regarding Iran. This reinforces the view that the American response was not isolated. This strengthens Israel's view of the Iranian regime as a direct threat, especially because of the actions of the Revolutionary Guard and groups linked to Tehran in the region. When Washington calls on its Secretary of Defense and coordinates even more closely with Jerusalem, the regime understands that the pressure may increase on more than one front. Southern Lebanon has also come onto the radar because the tension with Hezbollah remains connected to the same Iranian axis. The day before, Reuters reported an Israeli attack in Nabateh in southern Lebanon amid instability at the border. This helps explain why the response against Iran cannot be seen merely as a maritime episode. Tehran uses ships, militias, drones, missiles, and diplomatic pressure as parts of the same strategy. The problem for the regime is that Trump responded at the point where the provocation began, the military capability used to threaten the US. Unconfirmed reports also circulated about preliminary instructions to block all traffic in the Strait of Hormuz. Reports about a Revolutionary Guard speedboat on fire in the port of Sirik. Tehran tried to give the impression that it could shut off the flow of global trade. The American response sent another signal. Any attempt to hold Hormuz hostage could be costly, and radars, ports, drones, and coastal military bases could pay the price. On Iran's own oil money. The night ended with fires visible in Bandar Abbas, explosions recorded in Iran's southern corridor, and the Revolutionary Guard receiving the toughest message since the new round of tension in Hormuz. The Iranian regime wanted to test the ceasefire by attacking civilian vessels and trying to see how far Trump would go. The response came with bombings, sanctions, and coordination with Israel. For Tehran, the choice became narrower. Either stop using the Strait as a political weapon or face American pressure that now targets both the regime's military arm and its finances at the same time. Thank you very much for watching this video until the end. Support our project and contribute financially through the Pix key that appears on your screen. We are an independent channel focused on keeping you informed with truthful reporting. Your contribution helps us keep going.